Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pandamix, this episode on healing conversations in between times. I am the Reverend Lang Lim, and this is Dr. Hom. We're going to talk about healing in several dimensions, and to start us off, we chose the personal. And once we chose it, we thought to ourselves, why did we start with a personal? Here in Bali, for example, people might start with the collective, with a we. And we realized, well, it's because we are westernized as well. We start with I rather than with a we. And we put that out there just so that you might think and reflect that there are other cultures that immediately think about healing as a collective thing. And we think about it in the West, and those of us who are modern, as an I thing. But be that as it may, we have found it very helpful to think about healing in terms of a particular idea that the psychotherapist Bill Plotkin coined, the loyal soldier. That inside each one of us are these different subpersonalities. It's not that we are crazy, but we have these personalities. And one of them is a loyal soldier, a soldier that we created usually when we were very young, in response to some stress or threat. And it behaves like a loyal soldier. Bill picked up on a historical event. In 1974, a Japanese imperial officer by the name of Hiru Onoda was discovered in a Philippine island, still fighting the Second World War. He didn't know that the war had ended. And he had to be brought back to Japan to surrender his sword, to be brought back to a hero's welcome, to finally recognize that the war, Japanese war, had ended. And then he would stand down. Bill Plotkin took up this idea to say many of us actually have these loyal soldiers inside of us fighting a war that is past or mostly over, but this inner loyal soldier believes as if today this war is still on. And part of our inner healing is to become aware of our subpersonalities, including a loyal soldier, and having a relationship with this loyal soldier now that we are older and no longer really in this war.
Thank you, Lang, for setting that up for us in this conversation. I invite all of us to take a breath together, feel our body, feel our feet on the ground as we continue. What resonated for me, what you just said, Lang, is that the loyal soldier develop itself when we're younger. Maybe for some of us, we live in an environment that was trauma-provoking, or sometimes it's in a family system that's very confusing for us as children to deal with. Then my understanding is that we develop this defense mechanism, defense personality, survival personality, in order to survive. And the fact that you and I sitting here talking with each other, we have survived.
Yes.
Right? We survive our childhood, we survive our teenagehood. Yeah. And yet that personality that we developed as children and as young adults continue to live, and sometimes if we're unconscious, still running the show.
Yeah.
Right? So it's constantly in this survival mode.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I learned in my own experience is to begin to recognize, there's a part of my personality that was developed when I was very young in order for me to survive. And perhaps it's time for me to recognize that that is no longer necessary to run my life in that survival mode. So I'm just thinking, remembering the experience of myself being 8 years old, where this is at the end of the war in Vietnam. some people have metaphorical war that they live through. I literally lived through a war. And I was 8, and my father was put in jail because he was a physician, but he worked in the army for the South, Vietnam. And so overnight he was taken away. And so here I was with 5 other siblings. And my mother had to work, so she was out most of the day. And I remember the experience of having my grand aunt who came and visited us. And she said, "Home, your father is gone. You're the eldest son of this family. You are now the father." And so in that moment, I took upon myself seriously that role of being a father to my siblings.
Mm.
So I learned to cook, I learned to change diapers, I learned how to be extra responsible. I also learned to stop playing so that I can be responsible. So I suppose that's one of my loyal soldiers, is the hyper-responsible one, thinking that I need to know everything for everyone. If I don't know something, if I don't have it figured out, my family is going to be in trouble. So very early on, I learned how to fake it. Even if I don't know something, I know how to fake it until I make it. Sometimes I don't make it, then I just disappear or ignore. I also learned very early on to do shortcuts, to take a lot of risk, to be with a lot of uncertainty, especially during that experience of escaping from Vietnam on a boat and lost in the middle of the ocean and came to a refugee camp as a little boy, and then eventually came to the U.S. Always at that time thinking, I am responsible to rescue my family. It's my job to save my family.
Yeah.
So, please take a breath.
So how did that loyal soldier actually help you in your teens and in your 20s? And then when did you start realizing, it was no longer helpful?
The loyal soldier is, in some ways, very brave. It's willing to take on danger, take on activities that is challenging. The loyal soldier also knows how to fight, how to defend itself, how to build walls, how to escape, how to hide, how to react. So sometimes knowing how to defend myself is really important.
Yeah.
Where or when did I begin to notice that it's no longer useful? I remember when I was running the theater company, and it came to my mind that if I don't figure it out, this company will collapse.
Mm.
And so I work harder and strive harder, and eventually I find myself quite isolated and actually literally sick.
Mm.
I developed a terrible pain, ulcer and headaches, and couldn't sleep. And then about that same time, you had introduced me to psychotherapy. And then another friend introduced me to Vipassana meditation, where I started going to learn how to practice to feel my body. So I want to name all of this partly because I think healing at a personal level is multifaceted. Like healing at a physical level, healing at an emotional level, healing at a psychological and also a spiritual level. And so these are the different aspects that I needed to attend to, because I saw that there was some limitation in my life if I'm constantly living as if I'm still fighting a war.
Yeah.
And because of that mindset, I think in the past, I also attract relationships that feels kind of like contentious and sometimes in our relationship with each other. I remember early on, even now, sometimes in relationships, some of these old feelings of my relationship with my own life, but also relationship with my father or relationship with my mother, get triggered by the current relationship.
Yeah.
And so for me to begin to understand and tease out, well, what part of it is my child still reacting? My inner child, my wounded inner child, or the loyal soldier is still thinking that there's a war here that I need to fight.
Yeah. I mean, when I met you, you had already dropped out of college at Cal State Northridge and become a theater director, and I was I think was very attracted to how unconventional you were. And I know from your story that you wanted to be a fashion designer, and Bo, your dad, who was a medical doctor, was horrified. So you were loyal to him. So you said, good, you stay with college, but you did music. And when your mom and your siblings came, you switched from music to accounting. So I see that as
terrible mistake.
Right. So your loyal soldier said, "Great, I'm going to do what I need to do to get the work done," and then the accounting didn't work because your brain isn't just.
It's not wired for making the right side and the left side balance. It's always
Yeah. So that was taking shortcuts, right? It's like you're just going to cook the books and make it balance.
I have some dyslexia about numbers, but I didn't know that.
Right, you didn't know then. So the loyal soldier was like, okay, we just make it up. So that didn't work. Then you jumped into theater. So very adaptive for certain situations. So in your mind, when did your loyal, so you did all the healing and meditation and all of that. And at what point would you say your loyal soldier stopped, changed roles, stopped seeing that there was a war, that you could have a different strategy that was not about cutting corners or just jumping in or taking charge and being the dad, sort of like being the 8-year-old father?
The process is a gradual process over time, but I would say I recognize the loyal soldier the clearest when I decided that I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to complete my bachelor and then went on to do graduate work.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of work requires a kind of consistency, persistency, very slow, gradual, methodical. And so I realized that the loyal soldier in me didn't really know how to do that. It just know how to fight and escape and defend. But it didn't know how to have a long-term plan of doing one thing at a time. So I'm saying this to, I think it's important to acknowledge that the loyal soldier was not wrong.
Yes, that's such a good one. No, not wrong.
That like in some coaching or even in some therapy, say, oh, that's your gremlins running the show. But no, the loyal soldier or that inner gremlins or the inner critic had a role and it served itself very well. But now for me, in order to grow, in order to heal and develop myself in a way, I need to honor that part of me, acknowledge it that it's okay now. The war that was happening when you were 8, that war is complete. It's no longer so. Now we need a different strategy, different viewpoint about life.
Yeah, this point that some people in personal development work end up being very critical about these inner subpersonalities and get angry with their hurt inner child or their inner saboteur. Oh, I have an inner saboteur and what's going on? But that all of these were actually created by us in an early age to help us survive. And the very fact that we are here today means that even if we have a very strong inner critical parent or a wounded child, that they really needed to be acknowledged and loved for helping us come to this moment. And it makes me think about how in Western culture, in modern culture, in a competitive, achievement-oriented culture, that to say we need healing is to admit we are wounded. And somehow to admit that we are wounded is just a terrible admission, because somehow it means we have failed, we are crippled, we're diseased.
We're a loser. In America, you do not want to be a loser in America, because that's, in a way, worse than death.
Yes, that's worse than death. That's the bottom. And I have just been reflecting on, the Chinese language and what is embedded in the Chinese language, that the word, to 修养, which is the word parents use when they have children, 修养孩子, it's to cultivate, to develop a child, a person, and 修 means repair, and 养 means to rear, to grow something. And the two words are combined together, that repairing is part of cultivation as much as kind of putting fertilizer into a tree is part of cultivation, trimming it. So nothing shameful at all in terms of repairing or healing. And the word 自修, 自修, to cultivate yourself, is this one of the most important words. 自修, to cultivate yourself. It actually means self-repair. So self-development has repair and healing in it.
Interesting, because in Vietnamese, the word development or the word growth is dao.
Mm.
Dao means to dig.
Dig.
Dao means to create. So in order to grow, one must be willing to dig deep into our own psyche, into our own remembrance of our life experiences, and sometimes even dig deep enough into our ancestors and the roots in which this being come about.
And so the digging has the metaphor of going into the soil, into the dirt, into the muck, into what is ugly and unformed. Or shattered.
And so I would say, for a person to be willing to heal takes a tremendous amount of courage. It takes courage to heal, because it takes courage to feel.
Yes.
Feel the body. Feel the pain. And attending to the pain. Because we also live in a time, in a culture, oftentimes, where people who are experiencing pain in the body, you just pop one pill after another, painkillers, and just checked out, numb out. And so I think part of the healing process here is to cultivate the ability to feel.
And to feel into and to face into. Because in fact the actual war is past, whether that was a tragedy or that was just something horrific. How in this moment can we now re-enter into some of these and re-encounter the trauma? And there are many therapies out there now. We will write about them later or speak about them at another time. And I do want to say that you talk about being in charge and can do, and I am recalling that when I met you, I had a different experience of your loyal soldier. It was as if your loyal soldier had actually gone AWOL. Uh, I found you carefree, maybe yes, towards me and us, yes, and so I now think of it as a reaction formation. ADOL had to be the father. So then, when you experience me and I have my own responsibility, taking loyal soldier as well, you went AWOL and become callous, carefree.
Yeah, I think because I had to grow up so fast at 8 years old to become a man. So by the time I'm a young man, there's a part of me like, F all of this, I'm out of here. And so I revert back to what I consider the Peter Pan syndrome. Just seeking one pleasurable experience after another, one workshop after another, and so on. And so, yeah, sorry. I didn't care. And I think by that time, there's a part of me rejected all of it.
All the responsibility.
All the responsibility to the family. I said, I quit. I'm not the eldest son of this family anymore. You guys figure it out. I'm going to save my life. And I just disappeared for years.
And was that something that just happened, or was that an incident that I quit?
So my mother and father eventually reunited by that time, 14 years later. Right. They then had a divorce. And I was the eldest son, so I was selected to sit in between them to translate back and forth and mediate a divorce settlement. In one moment...
Wow, you really had to be the general, not just a small soldier.
I didn't know what I was doing. So one moment I just got overwhelmed and I slammed the table and I stood up and I said to both of them, I quit. You figure it out. And I walked into the room with my other siblings that were sitting there. I said, you want the job, you have it, I'm out. So I think you met me during that period.
Right.
I don't know whether I'm still the same like that. I hope I have healed that part of me because I'm aware of it. Now I'm also responsible for Mankind Institute as an organization. There are lots of people who are working with me, some people working for me, and so I think the loyal soldier in me now has an honorable place, but he doesn't have to run the company. The adult, mature, kind and loving, insightful man that I can now become run my life, not the loyal soldier. So I think that's where the healing happens, when I can begin to individuate from the programs that was put in me when I was young. So I'm saying this to the viewers. Perhaps some of you don't know how to relate to the story. Perhaps some of you can relate to experience what it's like to grow up in a really challenging family system where you have to grow up very quickly. Or you may also grow up in a family where your parents were completely indulgent and you have no responsibility. So for some of us also stay in this kind of, how would you call it?
Well, we stay in a kind of a Peter Pan, youthful place where every day is spontaneous, anything goes, because the indulgent parent inside has taken over the agenda, and that sometimes to avoid pain, because there is some kind of pain needed to grow, and to accept structure, and to accept limitations, and to accept responsibility.
Please take a breath with us.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring this conversation to a close for this episode. I just want to underline a few things here. That healing requires courage. So to admit to oneself, I need healing, and that I'm willing to explore what it means to heal. That requires a tremendous amount of courage, because in order to heal, one needs to feel. And when you experience your feeling, you will notice there's pain in the body, somewhere in the body. And we carry different memories, painful experiences that we have repressed in the body. So part of this process of personal healing is creating a container or space for these experiences to emerge, and then to take care of them by admitting and to feeling to them. What else is important?
Yeah, I mean, our teacher Goenka calls these your sankharas, these knotted feelings coming up and being able to face into it. And here we are saying that the process of healing is the recognition that our woundings do become our gifts. And the gifts are manifold. In the first part, it is to survive. And then after that, to realize these survival strategies have limitations. You can't always take charge, and you can't always go AWOL. And that the next part of it, moving through it, is to see a different kind of gifts. The gift to bring two together, to have the consciousness to know when to take charge now, when to let go.
So thank you for listening. We really appreciate your presence here with us. Please take a breath with me. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
Thank you for viewing.